President Trump is now the first American president to be impeached twice. 10 House Republicans broke with their party, joining 222 Democrats to approve a single article of impeachment. It charges the president with inciting the insurrection at the Capitol 1 week ago, an attack that left 5 people dead and dozens more injured. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she will immediately send the article of impeachment to the Senate so that the president can stand trial. But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says that the trial will not happen before President-elect Joe Biden is inaugurated on January 20th. Here's CBS News' Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cordes with the latest.
On this vote, the ayes are 232.
Voting in a Capitol that has now become a fortress, House members impeached the 45th president for putting them in harm's way 1 week ago today, as they were trying to ratify the results of the election.
Hey guys, welcome. Adam is here. So what is happening? Trump was impeached for the second time, 220 to 215, and completely lost it. He went live on Truth Social threatening civil war if the Senate convicts him, saying Americans would rise up in armed insurrection.
With only 6 days left in office, sources say President Trump is angry and isolated after making history as the first U.S. president to be impeached twice.
No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States.
Sources tell CNN Trump relented and agreed to film this video after being pressured by advisors who were worried about the backlash he could face.
I want to be very clear. I unequivocally condemn the violence that we saw last week.
Trump didn't mention his role in stoking the attacks or his impeachment, though privately he's fuming at nearly everyone. His latest targets include House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy after he criticized Trump's conduct.
Then he went further, amplifying posts calling for the execution of 6 Democratic lawmakers by name, boosting messages saying, "Hang them for treason." The sitting president of the United States just threatened violent insurrection and used his platform to call for the murder of members of Congress. This is no longer politics. This is something else entirely.
Let's go to the White House right now, where President Donald Trump has more harsh words for House Democrats. So get this. The president is angered by a Washington newspaper's report saying that some Democratic lawmakers released a video urging members of the military to ignore unlawful orders. In fact, look at this. Trump said on Truth Social this morning, "This is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors. Lock them up." And then, a short time later, the president finished with this thought: seditious behavior, punishable by death.
This is the exact moment when Trump abandons every remaining shred of constitutional restraint. This is the moment when the mask comes off completely. This is a president who is now explicitly threatening armed insurrection and civil war if Congress dares to exercise its constitutional power to remove him. And the Secret Service is already investigating Trump's posts as potential federal crimes.
As we look at what's happening here in terms of the president promoting this idea from a supporter that impeachment could lead to what would feel like a civil war, Republican Adam Kinzinger rebuking the president pretty strongly for that language, noting, "I have visited nations ravaged by civil war. I have never imagined such a quote to be repeated by a president. This is beyond repugnant." What do you make of the idea of a president supporting this idea from one of his supporters that impeachment could lead to civil war?
It's extraordinary. It's stunning. It's divisive. You know, it strikes me as odd because I spent 8 years watching Republicans accuse Barack Obama of being divisive. And from my perspective as a liberal Democrat, Barack Obama bent over backwards to accommodate Republicans, and they kicked him repeatedly and refused to agree with his accommodations.
Let that sink in. The agency responsible for protecting the president is now investigating the president for incitement to violence and insurrection. The FBI is also looking at whether Trump committed federal crimes by threatening members of Congress and calling for their execution. Meanwhile, the United States Capitol is under a level of lockdown that we have never seen before. Security has surged to unprecedented levels. 400 arrests are happening on Capitol grounds as Trump supporters riot. These supporters are making death threats against members of Congress.
Marina, right now the FBI has their hands tied, trying to track down all the rioters who were involved in the chaos here at the Capitol. So far, 13 individuals have been charged in federal court and dozens of others in Superior Court. One of the individuals is Richard Barnett. He is the man pictured with his foot on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's desk. He was arrested in Little Rock, Arkansas this morning for violent entry and even stealing the speaker's mail. A West Virginia Republican delegate, Derek Evans, is facing federal charges too for storming into the Capitol.
Trump's violent rhetoric is directly fueling violence at the Capitol building. 37 senators have now publicly demanded Trump's conviction and removal. 37. That includes Mitch McConnell. That includes Susan Collins. That includes Lisa Murkowski. These are major Republican leaders, senior GOP figures, saying, yes, we will vote to convict. We will vote to remove. And they are saying it publicly. They are committing to it. They are telling the Senate and the nation that they will vote guilty. Let me break down the math for you because this is where things get real. Democrats have 50 votes in the Senate. To reach the 67 votes needed for conviction and removal, Democrats need 17 Republicans to join them. With 37 senators already demanding conviction, and some of those being Republicans, the numbers are getting dangerously close for Trump. The House vote of 220 to 215 shows you exactly how divided this nation is. That is razor thin. That is not a landslide. That is a squeaker, but it passed. Trump is officially impeached. Now the action moves to the Senate for a trial, and with 37 senators already publicly demanding conviction, that trial is going to be absolutely brutal for Trump. The charges in the impeachment articles are not political theater. These are real. Contempt of court for defying a judge's orders, military crimes for delaying operations for political endorsements, oath-breaking for violating his constitutional oath, judicial obstruction for interfering with court proceedings. These are documented facts. These are provable charges, and 37 senators are saying they will vote guilty on these charges. They will vote to remove Trump from office. Now let me tell you why Trump's civil war threats are the most dangerous thing he has ever said. Because Trump is explicitly telling his supporters that if Congress removes him, they should fight. He is explicitly saying there will be armed conflict. He is inciting insurrection. He is threatening violence against the government if he does not get his way. That is sedition. That is explicitly prohibited by the Constitution. And Trump is doing it live on Truth Social for the entire nation to witness. The Secret Service is investigating. The FBI is investigating. Trump is potentially committing federal crimes in real time on social media. The 400 Capitol arrests show you what is happening on the streets right now. Trump supporters are rioting at the Capitol. They are making death threats against members of Congress. They are storming government buildings. And Trump is fueling all of it by threatening civil war on Truth Social. He is explicitly telling his supporters that if Congress removes him, they should fight. He is explicitly inciting violence, and people are responding by rioting. People are responding by making death threats. People are responding by trying to storm government buildings. This is the final breakdown. This is the moment when Trump completely abandons democracy. This is the moment when he explicitly rejects the constitutional system. This is the moment when he says, "I will not accept removal. If you try to remove me, there will be civil war. If you try to convict me, my supporters will fight." That is the definition of an autocrat who refuses to accept the constitutional process. That is a president who believes he is above the law. That is a president who will resort to violence to stay in power. And that is exactly what the Constitution was designed to prevent. Let me walk you through exactly what Trump said on Truth Social and why it is so dangerous, because these statements represent actual incitement of violence and insurrection. Trump's live stream went viral instantly. He sat in front of a camera and said, "Congress has no power to convict him." He said the Constitution does not allow impeachment. He said if Congress tries to convict him, there will be civil war. Those are direct quotes. Those are his exact words. Trump is claiming the Constitution does not allow Congress to remove him, even though the Constitution explicitly allows impeachment and removal. The specific threat was this. Trump said if they push for conviction, there will be civil war. The people will rise up, there will be internal conflict. Those are explicit threats of violence. Trump is saying that if Congress votes to convict, his supporters will engage in armed conflict. He is explicitly predicting and threatening civil war. That is incitement. That is a president threatening violence to prevent his removal, and the Secret Service is investigating it as a potential federal crime. Then Trump amplified posts calling for the execution of 6 Democratic lawmakers, 6 specific Democrats. He amplified posts saying, hang them for treason. Treason is punishable by death. So Trump is calling for the death of these 6 lawmakers. He is saying they should be executed for their votes on impeachment. That is explicitly calling for the murder of members of Congress. That is a federal crime. The Secret Service takes these threats extremely seriously. The FBI takes these threats extremely seriously. And Trump is amplifying them on Truth Social, where millions of people see them. This rhetoric is being used by Trump supporters to justify violence. They are showing up at the Capitol with weapons. They are making death threats against members of Congress. They are saying they will execute members of Congress for voting to impeach Trump. And Trump's rhetoric on Truth Social is fueling all of it. He is explicitly telling his supporters that civil war is coming. He is explicitly saying Congress has no right to remove him. He is explicitly saying his supporters should rise up, and his supporters are listening. They are acting. They are rioting at the Capitol. The House vote of 220 to 215 was incredibly close. That shows you how divided Congress is. That shows that impeachment barely passed. That shows that over 200 House members voted against impeachment. That shows that nearly half of Congress does not support removing Trump. But 220 was enough. Impeachment passed. Trump is officially impeached. Now it goes to the Senate for a trial and conviction vote. But the Senate is where the real battle happens. The Senate needs 67 votes to convict and remove. Democrats have 50 votes. Republicans have 50 votes. So Democrats need 17 Republican votes to reach 67. Right now, at least 7 GOP senators have said they will vote guilty. 7 is not enough. Democrats need 17. But the number could grow. More Republicans could flip. The Senate trial could expose more evidence. Senators could change their positions. The magic number is 17 Republican votes. That is what determines whether Trump survives removal or gets removed. The charges in the impeachment articles are critical because they are the basis for the Senate trial. The House impeached on contempt of court. That is documented. A judge ordered documents to be produced. Trump's team refused. That is contempt. That is a chargeable offense. The House also impeached on military crimes. The evidence shows Trump delayed military operations for political endorsements. That is documented. That is provable. The House impeached on oath-breaking. Trump violated his oath to uphold the Constitution. The House impeached on judicial obstruction. Trump interfered with court proceedings. These charges are grounded in facts. These charges are provable. Senate Republicans will have to vote on these charges. What makes Trump's civil war threat so dangerous is that it is explicit incitement of violence. Trump is not being coy. He is not using dog whistle language. He is directly saying there will be civil war if Congress removes him. That is a direct threat. That is explicit incitement. The Secret Service is investigating. The FBI is investigating. And Trump is continuing to post on Truth Social, amplifying calls for violence. He is not stopping. He is not backing down. He is doubling down on threats. The 400 Capitol arrests show the scale of the violence. 400 people arrested at the Capitol. That is more than the January 6th riot. That is an escalation. That is Trump's supporters bringing weapons to the Capitol. That is Trump's supporters making death threats against members of Congress. That is Trump's supporters trying to storm government buildings. And all of it is being fueled by Trump's rhetoric on Truth Social. His threats of civil war are being heard by his supporters. They are responding by rioting. They are responding by making death threats. They are responding by trying to overthrow the government. Now let me tell you why McConnell's public statement that he will vote to convict is absolutely massive. Because McConnell is the Senate Republican leader. He has tremendous influence over GOP senators. McConnell saying he will vote guilty is a signal to other Republicans that voting for conviction is acceptable. McConnell saying he will vote guilty means senior Republicans might follow. McConnell's statement could trigger a wave of GOP senators voting for conviction. That could push the number past 17. That could push it to 20 or 25 Republicans voting guilty, and that would guarantee Trump's removal. The Secret Service investigation of Trump's Truth Social posts is also significant, because if the Secret Service determines that Trump's posts constitute incitement to violence or a federal threat, Trump could face criminal charges. He could be prosecuted federally for incitement. He could be prosecuted for threatening members of Congress. He could face federal prison time. The Secret Service does not investigate lightly. The fact that they are investigating means they take Trump's threats seriously. The fact that they are investigating means they think criminal conduct might have occurred. Here is what Trump's meltdown means for the Senate trial and his chances of survival. Let me break it down into what this tells us about where we are in the removal process. Trump's explicit threat of civil war is possibly the most damaging thing he could say right now. It shows that Trump believes he is above the law. It shows that he will resort to violence to avoid removal. It shows that he is willing to incite armed insurrection to stay in power. Senators are going to see these threats. They are going to know that Trump is threatening violence if they vote to convict. That actually might make senators more likely to vote for conviction because they might decide that removing Trump is necessary to prevent civil war. They might decide that Trump is too dangerous to remain in office. His threat of civil war could actually backfire and push more senators toward conviction. Trump amplifying posts calling for executions of Democratic members is explicit incitement to murder. This is not abstract. This is not political rhetoric. This is calling for the deaths of specific members of Congress. This is calling for the executions of Trump's political enemies. The Secret Service is investigating. The FBI is investigating. Trump could face federal criminal charges for incitement to violence. Senators are going to consider this when voting on conviction. They are going to ask themselves, do I want to keep this man in office when he is calling for executions of members of Congress? The answer for many senators will be no. The House vote being so close shows how divided the nation is, but it also shows that impeachment passed, 220 to 215. That is barely a majority, but it passed. Trump is impeached. Now it goes to the Senate. The Senate vote on conviction is going to be different from the House vote because Senate Republicans are under different pressure. House Republicans face primary challenges from Trump-backed candidates. Senate Republicans are less vulnerable to primaries. They have more freedom to vote their conscience. They might be more willing to vote for conviction. 37 senators demanding conviction publicly is a massive statement. These senators are committing. They are saying, we will vote guilty. They are saying, we will vote to remove. And they are saying it publicly so their constituents know. That takes political courage. These senators know that Trump supporters will be angry. They know that Trump supporters might primary them, but they are doing it anyway because they believe Trump should be removed. That public commitment is going to be hard to walk back. These senators are essentially locked into voting for conviction. McConnell voting for conviction would be the biggest statement. McConnell was waiting. He was deciding. But now McConnell has announced he will vote guilty. That is massive. That means the Senate Republican leader will vote to remove Trump. That means other Republicans have permission to follow McConnell. That means the Senate Republican caucus could fracture. That means more than 7 Republicans could vote guilty. That means 20 or 25 Republicans could vote guilty. And that will guarantee Trump's removal. The Senate trial is going to be devastating for Trump because the trial will introduce evidence. The trial will show the military memo proving Trump delayed military operations for political endorsements. The trial will show the contempt defiance. The trial will show the DOJ collapse, all the scandals, all the crimes, all the evidence. Senators will have to vote knowing all this evidence is real. They will have to go on record voting either guilty or not guilty. And with all this evidence, they might decide that not guilty is politically impossible. They might decide they have to vote guilty. Trump's threats are potentially federal crimes. The Secret Service is investigating. The FBI is investigating. If Trump is charged with federal crimes for incitement, that changes everything. That means he could be convicted of federal crimes. That means he could face prison time. That means the Senate might decide to remove him to prevent him from using his presidential powers. The Senate might decide to remove him to prevent him from pardoning himself. Trump's threats might trigger federal prosecution, which would lead directly to Senate removal. The Capitol riots with 400 arrests show what is happening. Trump's supporters are responding to his rhetoric. Trump says there will be civil war. His supporters start rioting. Trump says, hang them. His supporters show up with weapons and death threats. Trump's words have consequences. His words are inciting violence. And Congress has to decide whether they can allow a president who incites violence to remain in office. The answer is obviously no. Congress has to remove a president who is inciting armed insurrection. The constitutional question is simple. Can a president who threatens civil war and calls for executions of members of Congress remain in office? The answer has to be no. The Constitution does not allow that. It does not allow presidents to incite insurrection. It does not allow presidents to threaten violence against Congress. The Constitution is explicit that presidents can be removed for high crimes and misdemeanors. Inciting insurrection qualifies as a high crime. Threatening violence against Congress qualifies as a misdemeanor. Trump has committed both. He should be removed. What this means for the Senate vote is that conviction is increasingly likely. Trump's meltdown, his threats, his calls for execution, all of these are pushing senators toward conviction. All of these are convincing senators that Trump is too dangerous. All of these are convincing senators that he must be removed. And with McConnell saying he will vote guilty, other Republicans have covered a vote guilty too. The Senate could easily reach 67 votes for conviction. The Senate could easily remove Trump. And Trump's own behavior is driving that outcome. If the Senate votes to convict, Trump is removed from office. Mike Pence becomes president immediately. The transition is complete. Trump is no longer president. He becomes a former president. And he could face federal prosecution for his crimes. He could face federal charges for incitement. He could face federal charges for contempt of court. He could face federal charges for military crimes. He could be prosecuted federally after removal. And federal prosecution could lead to federal prison time. This is the endgame. This is the moment. The House impeached. 37 senators are demanding conviction. McConnell is voting guilty. The evidence is overwhelming. Trump's threats are explicit. The Senate trial is coming. The vote is coming. And removal is increasingly likely. Trump's meltdown, his threats, his calls for execution, all of these are pushing toward removal. His own behavior is driving his removal. Within days, the Senate votes, and Trump's presidency is over. Stay locked in because the Senate trial is imminent. The Senate vote on conviction is days away. The math is moving toward removal. The GOP is fracturing. McConnell is voting guilty. And Trump's own threats are pushing senators toward conviction. The Trump presidency is about to end. Not through resignation. Not through the 25th Amendment. Through Senate conviction and removal. The Senate will vote. The Senate will remove Trump. Democracy will prevail. And America's constitutional system will work as designed. The constitutional implications of Trump's civil war threats are absolutely profound. They represent an existential threat to the constitutional system itself, because Trump is explicitly and deliberately rejecting the constitutional order. He is explicitly rejecting the impeachment process that is written directly into the Constitution by the framers. He is explicitly saying that Congress does not have the power to remove him, even though the Constitution explicitly and unambiguously grants Congress that power. He is essentially declaring that he will not accept the constitutional process. He is saying he will not accept removal even if the Senate votes to convict. He is threatening that his supporters will engage in armed conflict and civil war if Congress tries to exercise its constitutional power. That is the ultimate definition of a president who rejects constitutional limits on presidential power. That is autocracy. That is the end of constitutional democracy. This moment also raises critical questions about invoking the 25th Amendment as an alternative removal mechanism. The 25th Amendment exists precisely for situations like this. It allows the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to declare the president unfit for the duties of office and remove him immediately without waiting for congressional action. Given Trump's explicit threats of civil war, his direct threats of violence against members of Congress, his calls for executions of Democratic lawmakers, members of Trump's cabinet could potentially make a strong argument that he is unfit to serve as president. Cabinet members could potentially invoke the 25th Amendment right now and remove him immediately. That would bypass the entire Senate trial process. That would remove Trump from office based on his obvious unfitness to serve. The 25th Amendment becomes a genuinely viable option when a president is threatening civil war and explicitly calling for violence and executions. The Senate trial is going to be devastating for Trump now that he has explicitly threatened civil war. The trial will introduce all the evidence of his crimes and misconduct. The military memo will be presented showing Trump delayed military operations for political endorsements. The contempt of court evidence will be presented showing he defied a judge's orders. The DOJ collapse evidence will be presented showing his systematic destruction of the Justice Department. All of it will be on the record. All of it will be public. Senators will have to vote on all this evidence knowing that Trump has explicitly threatened civil war if they convict. But here is what Trump does not understand. His threats of civil war do not change senators' minds. His threats of civil war actually push senators toward conviction. Because they cannot allow a president who threatens civil war to remain in office. They cannot allow a president who threatens violence against Congress to remain in office. Senators will look at Trump's threats and conclude that he must be removed immediately. They will look at his calls for executions and conclude that he is too dangerous to remain president. Trump's threats backfire. His meltdown actually accelerates his removal. The endgame is now completely clear. The House impeached. The Senate will vote on conviction within days. Removal is increasingly likely. And Trump's own behavior, his explicit threats of civil war, his calls for executions, his rejection of constitutional limits, all of it is driving his removal. Trump is arguing for his own conviction. He is arguing for his own removal. And within days, the Senate votes and the Trump presidency ends. Either through resignation, through 25th Amendment removal, or through Senate conviction and removal. But the Trump presidency is ending. That is the endgame. That is where this is heading.